With the exception of matters of conflict, whether it be warfare or you're in conflict with another individual, honesty is the best policy. And it's the best policy everywhere. Like I said, with the exception of conflict. If you're in a war, you don't want to talk about where your spies are or your troop movements are or military technology, for example. If somebody is trying to take something from you, you have no obligation to be honest with that person. But outside of that, any other type of relationship, honesty is the best policy. And we're seeing this right now. I've made videos about the Epstein debacle. And it's not just a controversy on its face of the victims and of the blackmail and the intelligence operations and a foreign government operating here in the United States, or governments operating here. It's more than that. It's a moral issue. And when I say moral issue, in a broad sense, okay? And there's lessons to be drawn from this, both politically and personally. When I say honesty is the best policy, it rhymes, honesty, policy, but it is absolutely true. It's actually practical. It's not just some abstract ethical principle. It is, but it's also practical that it makes sense on a day-to-day basis. If you're dishonest with somebody, you're driving a wedge between you and what is real, both in your own mind and with everything else you come in contact with. You take, for example, what's going on with Epstein and the Trump administration, not just the Trump administration, but other administrations, other politicians, other leaders, both public and private. Now, I know that many of them can't be honest about it because what they did is unforgivable. But if you're Trump, and assuming that he wasn't on the island, I don't know if that's true or not, but I just, for right now, I'll assume that he was not. He did know Epstein. He knows exactly who he is. Now, at one point, he did kick him out of his circle, but you need to come clean. You need to tell people if there's an investigation, there's an investigation. You don't let people wildly speculate on what's going on. They're going to assume that you're guilty. Okay, it's a lie by omission. You take, for example, any company, and every company measures their metrics differently for their management, their internal metrics. Anybody who's ever worked in management or ran a company or at least has worked close to management understands this. You can have a manager that looks really good on the surface. Their numbers look really good. Their inventory numbers, their sales revenue looks great. That doesn't mean that they're a good manager. There are things that managers can do that can sort of puff them up to make them look good on paper. Depends on how they manipulate the workflow. It doesn't mean that what they're doing is good for the company. Because there are other metrics that the company, that matters for the company, but they can't measure. Like customer satisfaction. Yes, customers can give them their feedback, but customers don't always give positive feedback. A lot of times they don't give negative feedback either. So this is a really simple example, but if you cut your workforce down to a skeleton crew, yeah, it looks great because you've reduced payroll, but that doesn't mean that it's good for the company because, you reduce services. And this is just a simple example. Those that worked in this environment knows what I'm talking about. And that's the problem with politicians. This is the problem with institutions, broadly speaking. We got a lot of people that are in charge of things that know how to make themselves look good right now, but are not good for the institutions. Another example is the economy. We have a central bank and we have an inflationary economy. We have the baby boomer demographic that are the largest voting bloc in the United States. And as such, they're being appealed to. So we have an economy that you print currency, you create artificial demand, and you have high asset prices. While that looks good for the boomers, that own houses and their price value goes up, but that's not good for anybody. It's not good for people on fixed incomes, and that's not good for younger people, and that's not good for the country in the future, because that squeezes out, that does a crowding out effect. So you're not placing capital where it needs to go. You're making the cost of industry higher. So that's a problem. It's a lack of honesty. People need to understand that they live in the real world, okay? And you can't escape the consequences of the real world. And being dishonest, yeah, you can cover it up temporarily, but it comes back to you, and it'll come back to you even harder if you're dishonest about it.